I don't know what it is about Fruit Loops, but do y'all eat the dry parts first? You ain't never done that? Bro, I don't know what it is. I've been playing football since I was 6. And up until 2017, I never missed a year, so I played 20 years straight. Didn't miss a year of football. I mean, I'm used to being hit in the head and seeing stars and vision be a little blurred, but I can't say nothing because I gotta get this money for my kids. What's up, bro? You messing up this shot, man.
Are you aware of CTE? Do you even think about that type of stuff?
Oh, hell yeah.
What do you think
CTE
about?
CTE is real.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's real.
In what way?
It messes with your brain, so it changes you as a person.
Yeah.
Everything about the way you think, how you feel, emotions, moods. Wake up one day cool, next day you wake up angry.
Yeah.
You don't know why. It's just, it's 100% real. Back in the me and J.O. days right there, I have some days, man, where it can be bad. But I realized the NFL was not the same sport I fell in love with when I was a kid.
Yeah.
If I'd have known what I know now about the NFL, I'd have stuck with basketball.
If there's stuff like CTE floating around inside your head, whether literally or figuratively, do you think about that when you go then start fighting too?
Nah, I don't think about that. Not right now. I never really thought about CTE until I seen the movie Concussion. Until I understood it was based on a true story. I've heard about it and shit, but I've never really paid attention to it.
That's why I'm questioning it.
Yeah.
Because the only way that you saw that it was real or gave any validity to you was from a fucking movie.
Right.
It does have mythological and biblical proportions to it. It's David and Goliath, but it played out in real life in a way that it's the way you would write it if it were a fantasy.
Is one of these guys on the ticket?
Yeah,
that guy?
All these guys are. What do you think of the neuroscientists being here?
Hand-to-hand combat is barbaric by academic standards.
Yeah.
I think your average academician would be appalled.
Yeah.
And wouldn't know how to process it.
People are so far removed from being in this. These are whole communities in here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what people don't see.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to an incredible night of championship MMA here in Burbank, California.
From a brain injury standpoint, I think choking people out is much worse than concussing somebody, yeah.
This former NFL player is making his MMA debut tonight from Greensboro, North Carolina. Here is the Animal, Chris McCabe.
You see that jersey he got on, don't you? Yeah, you see that jersey he got? Yeah, I told you, baby. Appreciate that.
The thing you said about getting choked out is more damaging to the brain than repetitive hits.
The brain is very, very sensitive to lack of blood flow. People haven't studied the choking out phenomenon, I don't think, nearly as in depth and closely as they've studied concussion. Concussion's been overstudied, probably. You deprive the brain of blood flow for even a minute, and you're risking permanent neurological deficit or death.
Yeah. Well, what would you worry about more? Fighting in MMA or playing in the NFL?
In terms of long-term, see, the problem with all of this is linking it to a progressive disease. Of course, you can't minimize head trauma, you can't minimize concussion, and it's a real problem. There's no disputing any of that. It's just that we're talking about theoretical phenomenon where this repetitive head trauma that nobody understands initiates this progressive cascade of brain destruction. Destruction.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with deepest sympathies that the Calgary Flames organization mourns the sudden passing of former Calgary Flames defenseman Zarley Salapsky. Passed away this week at the young age of 49.
I'm here, and I'm here for one reason and one reason only. I wanted the truth for my family and for my brother and for myself. And once I find it, or I found what I've found so far, I want to share that and I want to challenge moving forward. Because I don't want guys to go killing themselves thinking, I've talked to so many guys thinking they have CTE. I'm like, but what if you don't? You've created an opinion based on Twitter and the New York Times. No one's suggesting that head trauma is good for you. I'm not denying concussions are real. No one's denying we shouldn't have safer sport. We should avoid concussion. But they're not mutually exclusive conversation. A concussion is a known entity. CTE is not. The tau is there. We don't know if it has anything to do with the concussion or the subconcussive hits. Speculation, theory, conjecture, that's all CTE is.
Tackle football is like smoking. The younger I start, the longer I'm exposed to danger.
We're here today shooting a commercial with the Concussion Legacy Foundation in support of banning youth tackle football. Ever since I retired, I worked in advocacy with the Concussion Legacy Foundation. They're one of the first institutions I came to when I was researching about brain injury and CTE.
San Francisco 49ers linebacker Chris Borland, he's retiring at the age of 24. Borland said, from what I've researched and what I've experienced, I don't think it's worth the risk.
Do you know that CTE is real, or do you believe that CTE is real?
Can you define real?
That there are real repercussions for having tau on your brain.
Yeah, I just feel like the framing of belief versus knowing for certain.
Yeah.
I don't know. The folks at Boston University have stated that they don't know for certain, and there's more research that needs to take place.
That's a really weird thing to me, man. That's a weird thing to me, where it's like, with as much interaction that they're having publicly, we can't prove, like you're saying, that hits are causing specific behavioral symptoms. Then it's like, we're still doing all of this in the name of CTE, yet it's not proven, yet we still do it. But in case, and we don't know. And so it's just, for me, I just feel like these are inflammatory responses.
Yeah, I looked into all of that. I mean, there's been cases of players that thought they had CTE and took their lives and didn't. There's a number of things that you can suffer from on a daily basis that you may or may not be able to attribute directly to your experience in playing football. But I don't know tennis players that have dementia in their 40s.
There are still thousands of kids and adults out there right now playing football at all levels who will eventually come down with this devastating and debilitating disorder.
There's a couple ways to motivate. You can encourage or you can use fear. One's faster, one takes less planning, less preparation, fear.
I've been privileged to meet over 70 former NFL players. I hear their stories, I speak with their family members, and I listen to their fears that they have CTE.
This is 4 sections of his brain, and those lesions are CTE.
That might explain some of his anxiety and irritability.
Brain damage in the NFL.
Chronic
The brain disease, multiple studies have linked
as CTE.
It means your brain screams.
Repeated hits
It's
to the
much
head.
more common
In athletes with a history of head trauma causes memory loss,
dementia,
Aggressive behavior,
mood changes.
even possible thoughts of
It's a
suicide.
very devastating disease.
tau starts clumping up, and eventually it'll kill the cell if enough builds up over time.
There's accumulating evidence now that this CTE pathology that we talk about is present in people who never had head trauma at all. But so you can all tell this is the brain. And this strip here is called the motor strip. That's responsible for voluntary motion. And so if we saw a lesion there, a hemorrhage or a stroke, we could speculate that somebody would be weak. But whether somebody was a compulsive gambler or they had explosive anger issues, we can't remotely approach those sorts of analyses. And yet we're doing it with the CTE and the tau. This is a brain that was donated by a family, so I don't know much about it. Typically they don't come with much history. It's not any particular disease process per se, it's just a donated brain. And that's it, it's a human brain. So here's the brainstem. These minuscule structures that have enormous function. This is part called the medulla oblongata. Those carry all of your motor function on one side of your body. You see that little black dot there? It's not unusual at all to find tau in the structure. It's there and it's just kind of a decoration. It has no functional implications. It's just there. It's an age-related thing.
It's like we have the perspective as if we're not supposed to degenerate at all.
Right.
So this is the top, like closest to the top of your crown.
This is the top of the head,
Yep.
right? This would be like under your, in the chin area, you know what I mean?
How many brains have you examined?
Many thousands.
You all right? Last thing you want is to have a forensic pathologist administering first aid.
This thing here is called a sulcus. And so that's the anatomical location that has been singled out as a CTE specific. 1 or 2 specks and that's it, and that becomes CTE.
Is that a spatula?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is how we put it back.
You guys are separated, just totally. You ever go home and cook after this?
Sometimes.
All the time. The more you get under the hood, the more you realize that it's all a very primitive exercise, what's going on. And you will find if you continue with this, that if you ask the questions, you will be criticized for it. Probably ridiculed for it. And it's really not science or medicine, it's more societal and cultural.